Hello, Author Nation, and we are here in St. Pete Beach, and we have the illustrious Troy Lambert.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So it's good to catch up with you, but we thought, hey, why don't we go talk to people on the show about your new gig that you're doing, and folks that probably know you as a guy that's been around helping teach craft and structure and plot, and and I think you kind of pulled it together in the name of your new company, Why You're This Way. So why don't you tell people a little bit about this?
Right, exactly. So a number of years ago, I started teaching, started working with the software Plotter, and teaching people a lot about plot and structure and the craft of writing. And now, it's kind of strange because that's not everything that I teach, but it's kind of what I'm known for,
right?
Because that's what I've been doing. And so in my new venture, since I left Plotter, I've joined CJ Anaya and Jana S. Brown, who had a thing called Geek Girl Academy for a while. And then I was the plot dude. So we combined that and made the Plot Geek Academy. So we teach about more than just plotting, but because of what we're known for, it kind of just made sense as a name and an umbrella to put things under.
Cool. So what's kind of your mission now that you've merged together and you've been talking about this? What do you hope this thing turns into over the next 12 months?
So our primary goal really is to help authors in everything from the creation of their book, the craft and understanding, like, how do I write a book and what does that look like, all the way to how do I craft a career? How do I define author success? And then once I've defined what that means to me, how do I get from where I am now to there? What is my path? And our primary thing is education. We're not offering a software offering or anything in particular to take people through that. It's more just, let's give you a path through some education that can give you the tools that you need along the way and can give you access to those tools, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So if somebody was watching this and they maybe have started a book or they've got a good idea or an outline, what would be like the three things that you would say? Let's not even go three. Let's go one. The thing that's going to make 80% of the impact for them to get to a finished book.
80% of it honestly is knowing your why. Like, why are you doing this? Why do you want to write this book? Why do you want to put it into the world? Because that's all going to impact how you pursue a career, the kind of craft that you engage in to learn more about your craft, how you create the books in the middle with the process. What's your editing process look like? What is the formatting of the book look like? Mm-hmm. All of that is going to be largely dependent upon your why, because you have to have a strong reason to keep going on those days when it gets hard. Mm-hmm. And so knowing your motive, knowing your why is really the key to everything. So you may have a good idea and think, well, maybe I just want to sit down and write a book. But the question is, what do you want to do with it once it's written? Mm-hmm. And why are you writing in the first place? And why are you the person who should write it in the first place? Mm-hmm. Why should people listen to you? And that's going to set the foundation for everything that you do. So a big part of it is just defining out what would be the ultimate success for this book? Mm-hmm. What would that look like? And then, well, now that I know what that looks like, how do I get from where I am now to there?
Yeah. Well, I think that let's assume that they've got that kind of figured out. Like, nobody wants to write a bad book.
Right.
And at least my take on it is, even if you think you are a good writer, there's things you can, like, professionals continue to work on their profession, right? Like, you might be a great golfer, but you're hiring the best coaches you possibly can to work on your putting and short game, because if you take one stroke off of that, it could be millions of dollars in a championship game, right? What are the things that are like the most common obstacles in getting up the curve on craft?
The most common obstacles is often with new writers is they're trying to do too much in one book. Okay. They've got this big giant idea and they're trying to explore all of these concepts with 16 characters in one book. And so it's turned into this gigantic thing that has, you know, all of these moving parts. And really one of the keys to your first book as an author, I often tell people, is keep it simple. You're going to work on one theme, only have a minimum number of characters, because you're going to show your readers that read that first book that you know how to write a book and you know how to finish something. And so making it too complex and not understanding the pacing and the way that plot and things like that actually work and what readers expect out of that. Because it's not necessarily about you. People say, you write, you can do whatever you want. You absolutely can. But if you want readers to read it, you kind of have to know what they're after and what they're looking for. And so a part of it is kind of having an idea of who that audience is, even if that audience is you, because you read books in your genre, so you know what you like and what you expect. But really analyzing what is that about those books that makes them great, and understanding plot, pacing, and some of the basics of story.
No, it's such an important part, because I think so often, even on this podcast, we talk to authors, we talk about their why they're writing it. But once there's money in the equation, you're asking another human being to say, oh, this thing that you've been daydreaming about is worth more than the $5.99 in my pocket.
Right.
What is it that, you know, readers are looking for? Like, help somebody think through, like, you know, there's probably some really common things across genre, whether you're writing like you do, a mystery thriller, or somebody's writing action, or, you know, romance. There's certain things that are core to that experience.
The primary things, I think, is character. And the reason is, I always tell people, the reason we write fiction is we give people hope, right? They're living their ordinary lives, and whether they're reading as an escape or as a form of entertainment, whatever that is, they're looking to explore life and life issues through fiction, whether that's to get a break from their life because they're having a rough life, or because they just want to expand and enjoy something, right? But we're writing to give them some kind of a hope. And the way we give them is through ordinary characters, ordinary people like you and I, dealing with extraordinary situations and coming out victorious. And so I always say that character comes before story. The character and who the character is and the issues that they're exploring and the things that they're dealing with are the same things that your reader is dealing with. And through fiction, we often explore these big concepts through the minutia of telling a story. But we do that through the characters, and the characters and how they react and how they experience those things. And that's what sets, not to get into the AI argument too deeply, but that's what sets human writing apart from AI, is we're exploring big issues through these situations in a way that AI does not understand those issues. So it can write a book in the right order with the right, you know, tropes or something like that, but it's not going to be able to inject the character ability to explore all of those issues the way that's what people come to fiction for often.
Yeah, and I would back that up with, I remember this a few years ago, we did that Keystone survey and worked with Kindlepreneur. They did the analytics on it, and character was such a key word for readers across every genre. Like they talked about they liked a good plot, but what really drew them to a series was always character, right? There was this, you know, parasocial connection where they felt, whether it was they were experiencing it or that character was a friend of theirs, they went on that journey you just talked about.
Right, exactly. We think about that like great series like Jack Reacher, James Bond, you know, the Mission Impossible series. All of those have a central character. And even though often those characters are kind of static, the ones around them that make the story is sometimes the antagonist even. But there's something of an interesting character, because really a story is interesting people in interesting places doing interesting things, right? And the key there is interesting.
Yeah.
Right? The key is kind of interesting. Like, if it's not interesting, we don't want to see your character shaving.
Yeah.
It's really not that entertaining unless there's a throat cutting scene or something. You know, but I mean, that's not what we come to fiction to see. We come to see things that are entertaining and interesting and outside of our ordinary lives. And it's the same thing with characters. Characters need to be interesting. None of us ever walk into any situation as a blank slate. We've got a past. We've got our own biases and experiences that come into that situation. And so do your characters. So it's really helpful to have them develop to the point where you know what those are.
Yeah.
And you know what they're coming, the baggage that they're coming into the situation with, so that then you can explore issues using that character as the tool to do that.
Yeah, when you think about something like a Tarantino script, put it aside, like you read that dialogue and it, you know, that character is the kind of person that knows exactly what to say in that particular situation, right? And that not only that dialogue moves the story from one place to another, right? Or David Mamet's another one that's pretty strong with that, where like just reading the script and the dialogue, you're like, okay, like I'm learning about the person, learning about their motivations, I understanding what's going on in like the conflict in this whole particular instance of these people interacting. And, you know, when you get that connection, whether you feel that that's you or you're rooting for the character, that's always really powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, like the new Star Trek animated series, Lower Decks, there's a lot of Trekkies that started watching it, and they're like, man, I don't know if I like this show. But by the first few episodes in, they're like, I really like this show. But if you look at the four main characters in that show, those are the four types of Trekkies. So there's someone in that show that you identify with if you're a Star Trek fan. And so you're like, wait a minute, am I a Boimler? You know? So you know what I mean? You're like, oh. And so they've used that as a tool very much to get people engaged in the series, because we know that there's at least one of these characters that you're going to identify with.
If you like that.
If you like that. You know, and if you don't, well, you're probably not watching it anyway.
Right. It's, but that's certainly knowing your audience and kind of ratcheting back up with the question chain there is like, that's what that person's looking for, right? Like if that's who you want to have as your audience, right? And I think, I know you've been around a while, like if there's something that I think is kind of a pretty big thematic change in what's changing in authordom and indie authoring, and it's a little less focus on the production process and a lot more focus on the relationship with your audience.
Right? Absolutely.
And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody sat in front of a whiteboard and did analytics and figured out there are four types of Trekkies and this is what they are and this is that. So always right, like that's smart.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's a lot of what is happening in the industry, and part of it's because we have more tools to do it, is really data analysis of what is it that people really like about this book. What do they like about these characters? And so what's a way that I can harness that and use that in my writing to create characters that are also relatable, that people who read this genre also like. And it's also become a trend in romance very much to, like, you see a TikTok ad for a romance book and it has all the tropes listed.
Yeah.
Because you as a reader know, oh, I like a slow burn, small town romance with this type of character. And that's listed. When that's listed in the book description, I know I'm going to like that book. I'm going to buy it and I'm going to like it. But I also know that if I don't like slow burn romance, I'm just going to scroll through the ads till I find one that is what I like. You know, so I think authors are being a lot smarter in saying, like we used to, tropes, that just, I don't want to use tropes. But the reason tropes are there is because they work. And all writers use them to one extent or another. And if you use them effectively to reach your audience, well, you're doing great. And there's probably tropes that you as an author like and that you would include in all of your stories anyway. So why not reach out to that group of readers that likes that kind of trope? So I think it's a big part of like analysis that we do that we didn't necessarily used to do. You just write, I write for an audience of one, and then you throw the book out and see who reads it. So,
well, I think, going back to say 2015, 16, 17, when there was a lot of really underserved genres, that was kind of an unconscious analysis by like, hey, I love reading, and I've always thought about writing, and when I go into the market, I don't see anything that fits me. So I did write for an audience of one. It just happened to be that you were the perfect demographic, right? That there's a lot of you out there, and they saw it and they came in, right? So now we've just got to get more deliberate about it and thinking like, okay, I'm writing dark, I'm writing spicy, I'm writing sweet. All those kind of things help you to be like, okay, I'm more in tune with what the expectation is of the reader.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's absolutely true. And the other thing that we have now that we didn't have before, because we have the ability to analyze that data and we have kind of all those subcategories that have kind of formed themselves on Amazon, then when we talk about, like reaching 1,000 true fans, that's really all you need for a career. Mm-hmm. Well, it's much easier to do that when you know exactly where those fans are.
Yeah.
Like, this is exactly what they're reading. This is exactly where they live. This is exactly where they buy books. Yeah. And so it's much easier to target them and kind of weed out the people that you know are not going to be your fans.
Yeah.
Because that's also one of the biggest errors is you'll go to a new author and you'll say, who are you writing your book for? And this is a book for everybody. Yeah. Well, no, it's not. It's not a book for everyone. No one's written that book yet. Mm-hmm. And so you need to just have something in mind, like, where are you putting this book? Where does it belong in the marketplace?
Well, and, something I talking that's not necessarily on the craft side, but when you're, there's, again, a big misconception. It's like, well, which customers do you want? Well, all the ones I don't have now. like, okay, well, you don't just do that one way, right? Like, you have to think through, and we were talking about this earlier over in the lobby. It's like, if you're looking at Kickstarter, there's really clear indicators from the people that are there, what they like and how they want to buy, right? Now we add in, they like these tropes or this genre, but they like, part of what is important to them is they help somebody by funding something ahead of time, getting something cool, typically physical, right? And those are nice customers because they have a higher average order value. They're giving you the money before they expect the product. I just see this a lot where, like, I tried doing that Kickstarter. It didn't work. It's like, well, what happened? Like, well, I sent it to my list and they just told me that I'm on a fixed income and all I can do is afford Kindle. It didn't work. And it's like, well, tell that to Brandon Sanderson, right? Mm-hmm. Well, he's Brandon Sanderson. Yeah, that's part of it. But he didn't go there. He was going there and focusing on what the people on that platform wanted, right? Mm-hmm. Then the network effect happened and it grew. But you have to be thinking about what the people there want, and they'll be willing, from what I've seen, those people are willing to pay you a lot more money, right? Mm-hmm. Whether they're a true fan or not isn't necessarily the case yet, but they are a true fan of Kickstarter and finding things there and paying, $50. Like, yeah, I'll give this guy Troy $50. It looks like cool, and as long as I get it, I'll be happy.
Right. Exactly. And you see that a lot in the tiers on Kickstarter is they're not price sensitive tiers.
No.
You're paying $20 sometimes for an ebook and a workbook.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't, if you went on Kindle and saw that same ebook for $20, you wouldn't buy it on Kindle.
Right. It'd be like...
So the audience crossover doesn't work because the Kickstarter, they want something unique. They want it first.
Yeah.
They want if they want that physical special limited edition, well, that's not the special limited edition that you're going to sell in your local indie bookstore because they're not going to be able to afford to buy it from you.
Yeah.
That's going to be just frightening to them of, oh, that's how much? $40 for a thriller? No way. But the Kickstarter fans won't blink at that at all because that's what they're there for. And so I think when we try to cross over audiences, it's like when you try to run ads on BookBub to a full price book. Right,
yeah, that's a perfect example.
It's a discount sensitive marketplace. But on Amazon ads, you can run full price ads all day long and have success with them.
Yeah.
So,
well, and so like what we're doing at Ray with Author Nation is, we're really focusing on bringing, creating an event that a reader would come to that's willing to spend $500, right? Like like you start to craft this identity. There, who knows how many there are? We're gonna figure that out. There's not as many as there are people that'll be in Kindle Unlimited, but if a guy or a gal is willing to come to the show, and before they even picked up a book, they spent $250, $500, and they physically come into the building. Isn't that the kind of target market you want to be standing in front of with your wares?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what's cool is the idea that, okay, we found a collective way that we can bring those people to one place, so you don't have to find your $500 people and them, and you come there and then you can find those people. But once you do, you get 100 of those people lined up, your business is in a lot better position. But now you've got the data to go find more of those people.
Right, exactly. You've got the data to know and understand who those people are and who your buyers are in a way that you won't necessarily understand on another retail platform or whatever. But those same people, are the people who will come to your signings and buy your special editions and stuff like that. But they may not be the people that buy your $3.99 book in Kindle.
Right.
Because they're not interested.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the same audience, and it's okay to have more than one audience.
Yeah.
We
it's
talk about
better for your business.
Oh yeah, we talk about segmenting out, your email list and stuff like that. And the reason is those segments are different people. Yeah. They're different human beings. I mean, it's like Kevin Tomlinson says in some of his talks, like, the surprising thing is that readers are human beings. I know it's hard for us to believe as authors sometimes. They're not just there's real people behind there, and those real people have habits and desires and needs and different economic situations and all of those things. And so expecting a crossover between those two, I think it's kind of a silly business mistake. And it's a thing that authors do often. And when you're first starting out writing, you're not always thinking about all of these steps down the way. And maybe it's probably a bad idea for you to be thinking too far ahead. But at the same time, not thinking about it at all is probably a bad move as well.
Well, and I'm going to swing this marketing stuff back into the book. I'm a very strong believer that your absolute best marketing is that book. It's the craft of that book. It's that experience, right? Now, you may blow it on how you run a bad ad because the first and last thing they read is that ad. But let's say we get them into the book. We want that book to be able to sell the whole brand. That's its job.
Absolutely. And we often say, those of us that have been around a long time, we say craft is marketing.
Yeah.
And this is why I often say for new writers, start out simply with something that's simple. Because like a couple of years ago, I wrote a really complex thriller. It's a double POV. You don't get you see hints, but you don't get how those POVs tie together until the very end. 10 years ago, I didn't have the chops to write that book. It would have been horrible. But this was very successful. Well, it was successful because I had matured in my craft as an author to the point where I could actually pull writing something like that off. And even then, it was a challenge.
Yeah.
But if I tried to write that as my first book, I would have never gone anywhere. Because I know, because of who I am now, I know it would have turned out horribly. You have to learn your craft and mature as you go, because craft is marketing. If they get to the book, they get through all of your marketing funnel and get through the ads, and they get to the book, and the book is terrible, and now it doesn't matter how many ads you throw out at them or how long they've been on your email list. You've betrayed them to the fact that, and they're like, I can't trust this writer to write a good story that ends well.
Yeah. Well, I've seen a few people like on Facebook posting things like, I've been running this particular ad program and I'm not getting the results that the guy said or an ad. You look and it's like, well, based on your data, like you went from selling 1 book a month to 8 books a month. That's really good.
That's pretty good.
But now 7 more people a month know the book sucks. And that's why things aren't scaling, because they're not picking up book 2. They probably didn't finish book 1.
Yeah, you can't scale on a bad product.
No.
I mean, that's part of the, and so you see those cheap products on Facebook, they just cycle,
Yeah.
right, of other type of products. The reason they cycle is people order them, find out it's a terrible product, they tell all their friends, hey man, I ordered this off Facebook, don't order this, this is awful. And so that company quickly goes away. Usually, of course, they pivot to some other cheap product, whatever the case may be, But as an author, that's much harder to do because you're the brand. Your name is your brand.
Yeah, yeah. So, with the Plot Geek Academy, is there like a process that you guys are focused on that you're trying to walk people through, or kind of, what's your methodology that you feel has served you and would serve others?
So the methodology, where we're headed, right now we have some craft courses and then some courses on career, and those are leading you towards an eventual, like, this is from craft to career. Mm-hmm. But our eventual goal is to have essentially a few different paths. You answer some questions about what success means to you. Where are you at right now with your writing and your craft, and where is it that you want to go? And some of those will involve things not just asking you where you're at in your craft, but giving you some kind of a test or a quiz that tells us something about what's your personality type and how well you actually grasp the concept of writing and things like that. And then we can provide you with almost like a pathway through, because often you arrive at a course site and there's 4 million courses on there. You don't know where to start or where to go. And so instead, our idea is to more have an opportunity for you to more kind of customize and individualize a path through a set of courses that says, okay, this is going to teach you this about plotting at this level. And then if you want to go to the next level, we'll have courses at that level too, but we really want you to finish through this level initially. Yeah. Because the primary thing is, we always say the primary marketing thing is write the next book. Mm-hmm. Write another good book. That's what you need to do. But we often don't focus on what is the path from starting that book to draft to complete to published. And so if we can take them through a set of courses that leads them that entire way, then now you know how to repeat that process again. Yeah. Now you're ready to go to the next level and learn some more advanced techniques. But at a minimum, you can go through the process.
Yeah. That aligns with what we're doing at Author Nation in the sense of like in having these different tracks. And like in my mind, like no matter where you expect this to go, the first hurdle you have to get over is that book published, right? Mm-hmm. Just get through the process, understand how it works. It better not be your best book ever.
No, it better not be your best book ever, because you better be working on the next one.
Yeah. And then it's figuring out how to get, and most people say, their objective is to make money from it, is, okay, that means after some investment of time and money, this thing needs to become a producer of capital so that it can grow on its own, right?
Right.
So getting to that where, it's made its first dollar of profit, gets to break even, it gets to where it's paid back capital, that becomes another, in our view, hurdle, right? Like,
right.
Now, from there forward, it gets to be where you probably got a decent backlist, and you'd start to think about really deeper stuff that you can navigate around. Okay, what do I want this to look like? Do I want to be doing Kickstarters and selling direct and NKU and this and that? Don't do it all.
Right.
Right?
Don't do it all at once.
Yeah. And I think that gets hard too, as you hear every time you go and it's like, well, I'm doing this and I'm making $1 bazillion. And it's like, well, if I did that and that, I'd make $3 bazillion.
Mm-hmm.
No, you'll just have a nervous breakdown.
Right. You'll burn out. And I mean, that's part of the thing is, first of all, there's all kinds of different paths to publication. And a lot of that depends upon what your definition of success is. And nobody can define that for you. And the other part of it is that there's no roadmap. There's no X that marks where the treasure is. And we're keeping that a secret from you till you come to our conference. And then we're going to reveal at the last minute, here's the map and here's the path and take this. Because inevitably you're going to have that well-spoken person up on stage who gives you a list of things to do, and you as a newbie author are going to write that list down. You're going to be like, I'm going to go home and do this, and by the end of next year, I'm going to come back to Author Nation next year, and I'm going to be a millionaire. And, that's going to be awesome. And then you get home, and you find out that there's about half that list that you can't do.
Yeah.
Like, you literally can't do it. And so I'm like, well, now what? Now you feel like a failure because you didn't do it. No, that's not it at all. It's that you haven't found your path to doing things.
Yeah, one of the things, I wish I had brought it to show people, but because I've got a printed out copy of it. We have the notebook. We worked with Lulu to make a custom notebook. So besides just looking dope with the cover and all that, every session has 5 items to rank on a 1 to 5 categories. So, and that is for impact and effort, right? Mm-hmm. So you would have a score between 5 and 25 for each one of those things. So the idea is you're working your way through these different sessions. You do this, like, do I have the resources to do this? Do I have to learn new skills? That's going to adjust the ability of effort that you need to achieve this. It could be really significant impact, but if you can't do a bunch of those things, then the effort's equally as high, right? It might, right. Long story short, being able to get to the end of the show and put this into an Eisenhower matrix, and in that quadrant that is low effort, high impact,
yeah,
pick one, pick the most significant, go do that, right? 2 things will happen, right? One is your business will change. It'll change fast. It could. Number 2 is when you go back and reevaluate everything you scored, things are going to change because now maybe you do have more resources, so the impact is lower, right? You may need to have to adjust some of these things. But kind of piggybacking on what you were talking about in conferences and how I only have these 57 things that I need to do and my business will be what I want it to be. I can't remember what the guy said about 52 and 3. And, let's bring this back. It's like, go there thinking about, and we also put together a pre-show planner. Like, what questions are coming here to get answered?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what information do you need? What decision are you trying to make? What information do you need to make that decision? Right? Most people don't think that through. Like,
right.
Who's coming? Like, no. Do you have a problem you want solved? What is everything you need to know about that to make an educated decision? Might not be the right decision,
but at least it's educated.
Yeah, right. Like, it'll probably be a better rationalized decision, and that's not to say that you can't change think about or what the priorities are, but it just puts you in a different mindset. And I think it sounds like a similar kind of process that you're doing. It's like, well, if I can roll back to all these decisions I'm making as I move forward off of why I'm doing this, you're going to be making more educated choices about things you.
Right. You can also prioritize. Like, you can only really handle so much at once. And especially, like, if you're still in the position where you have a full-time job, like I've been doing this full-time since 2009, well, that changes the dynamic of everything that you're doing. But if you still have a full-time job and children at home, like when I first started out, well, my priorities were way different than they are now. Now I'm an empty nester, and I have a lot more freedom in how I can set up my schedules and what I can do financially and things like that. Because your oldest kid moves out, especially if it's a boy, and you find money in your house and you know you had. Like, there's just money laying around. There's food in the refrigerator, things like that have happened, right? And so
just don't have to work as hard.
It's just really strange. But, that's a different place than if you've got a 2- and 4-year-old at home and you're homeschooling your first grader and, that type of thing. That's a completely different dynamic. So you have to look at, like, that time management. What can I actually do? And sometimes it's one thing at a time, and I can spend 20 minutes on this each week.
Yeah.
And that's the best you can do. Well, that's the best you can do right now. And so maybe being full-time by the time your kid is in 3rd grade is not going to be possible. Okay?
Yeah, and
right.
That's something that you and I are copacetic on as far as a message is like, there isn't this, because I have people at other shows where they come up to me and they're like, yeah, I'm 4 years from retirement, AT&T, and I've got this pension, and I think I should just quit today and go full time because they're drinking the Kool-Aid, right? And it's like, no, like you need to finish that out and get that pension because that's gonna make this a lot easier when you've got that check coming in, not trying to make everything float off your writing right now, like. But you can get so many mixed messages and really enthusiastic about, no, I am committed to this. I'm ready to jump off the ledge right now. And it's like, sometimes the reality is, like you say, is like you have to pace this career and the rest of your life, and give yourself some grace that it is going to take 20 years,
Right.
because you need to be spending some time writing and working on a craft, but also enjoying the fact that you have this family you're raising.
Yeah, and it's about that sustainability. Like, can I do this forever? An example is, like, my partner, she works in the prison system in Oregon, right? She's 3.5, 4 years away from retirement. Now, could I retire her early, potentially within the next year or two? Yeah. Am I going to? No. Because if she spends the next 3.5 years and gets that fully vested pension, that's free money.
Yeah.
Well, why am I going to say no to free money for another, year that we can travel the country in our RV and I can ride all the time?
Yeah.
No, that's just not going to happen. It's not because I don't want her to retire. It's not because I don't love that whole idea, but it's because just financially and personally for her and everything like that, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do things that don't make sense just because I went to a conference and somebody said, I retired my wife and bought her a new house. Hey, congratulations. That's awesome. We're not going to do that over here.
Well, and I'll say I've had some people talk about retiring their husband, and I said, you've just really figured out a great way to suck the joy and make your anxiety go up, because now everything is contingent on your success, right? I understand how great that sounds. I also know how many sleepless nights you're going to have, because as you know, it's not always up. There's downs, right? Like it's not that your career isn't growing. It's just, this series got a little long in the tooth, and you don't necessarily have the next great idea, and whatever it might be with the economy, and you have a slump. And if you've along the way let your lifestyle creep and your business expenses creep and live at what the highs are, those lows are super, super painful, right? Siloing that cash on the highs and living off where the lows are, right? And just go, if you don't believe me, just go look at your last 3 years of launches and how the sales have gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
Absolutely.
And actually, this is the thing, like you're great. A great chart of that, it would be where your lows are higher each time and your highs are higher. But if you think that there's suddenly going to be this magical unicorn day where one of those highs just breaks out and keeps going up and to the right, yeah, you are a fantasy writer.
Right, exactly. we like to read fantasy too. It's okay. Well, and it's all about kind of cash flow and stability, and there's a certain amount of predictability to the market, but there's also a certain amount of, if the algorithm changes, if something else happens that's absolutely out of your control, then, because there's so many parts of the author life that we don't control, of our careers that we don't control. There's things you can control, things you can't. And some of those things that are out of your control can seriously impact your income. But there's also just life events.
Yeah.
Now you've retired your husband, so you're carrying his health insurance and he gets cancer.
Yeah.
Right. And I hate to put some stuff like that out into the world, but here's the reality of the thing is like, that you're going to have some real life expenses and also some things that are going to take time away from your writing and your craft and your career that there's absolutely nothing you can do about, but that's going to impact your income. And if that's the only income you have coming in because you gave up that pension at AT&T to retire early and write, well, you may have some serious issues.
Yeah.
And we all know this, and we kind of all know this cash flow thing, but as we get older, it's just something we have to think about and consider.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, you're talking about from, the craft to the career. It's if you are thinking about it as a career, that's a pretty serious component. I personally believe, because I've, Susan and I have for decades been self-employed. I feel there's more security in me in my self-employment than working for somebody else. I know the boss is crazy, but I know
he's predictable.
He is predictable, and he's right. He's approachable, and him and my interests are 100% aligned.
Absolutely.
That's not true, right? Like, as somebody who's employed other people, there's times where I've had to make the horrible, horrible decision to say, for the good of the company and most of the employees, these other people aren't going to be employees anymore. And it wasn't necessarily that they weren't great employees. They weren't the greatest employees. And we had to pick and choose who was going to stay on the boat and throw a few overboard. That sounds horrible, but that's what happens when you're
Right.
And so when you're the person that doesn't have that choice in your life anymore, you can't get mad at that happening. You made the choice that you're going to let some of your agency go as being an employee. So,
yeah, and I mean, I've been there before too, where I've become too reliant upon one platform or whatever, and this is a big part of my income, and then that changes through whatever the circumstance is. And so a big part of that is, taking that ownership as an entrepreneur. And there's all kinds of ways you can do that in the writing industry, but it being you and you Incorporated is the brand, and that's what you're doing. There's a lot of security in that. And that self-employment I think it has a lot more security than a regular job, but I also think that it's kind of nice to have someone, my risk window is really wide, where my partner is more inclined to say, hey, come back from the edge. Let's not put the mortgage on red. That's a bad idea, things like that. So that kind of tempers that a little bit, but also, the fact that you do have some security there and some steadiness is sometimes useful. And for some people, like if you're a person who's very risk averse, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, it's been great having you on. Why don't you tell folks where they can find you and the new courses and stuff and what you're all up to?
Yeah, easiest way to find me is at TroyLambertWrites.com. Just go to my website, TroyLambertWrites.com, and the new venture at theplotacademy.com.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Troy, I'll see you in Las Vegas, and we'll be hanging out, and I'll let you get back to the beach.
All right. Fantastic. Fantastic to see you. Thanks, Joe.
Bye.